Good morning. Welcome to another exciting discussion of nonsense and whatever. Sorry. Coming to you live from snowy downtown Crestline in the San Bernardino Mountains of Southern California's Inland Empire. Uh, what idiot is calling me now? All right, let's see.
Hi, this is Sydney with Health Enrollment Services on a recorded line. Can you hear me okay?
What in the world do you
Hello?
want? What do you want?
I understand you might be looking into some health insurance programs that could decrease your healthcare costs.
No
Is that
thanks.
correct?
Well, it wasn't a recorded message, but it was someone selling something. Never say yes to a cold call. They might record it and have you say yes to buy something. Well, at least it wasn't solar panels or um, the one that says the warranty on your automobile has expired. I don't have a car or a truck or a Jeep. I don't even have a bicycle. Some idiot stole it before I could take it to the dump because it was all rusted out and had two flat tires. Affordable health care. Yeah, right. I was doing fine paying my doctor cash before Bummer Care. I think that was around 2012, 13, or 14. I think my eyes change color because the lighting and the camera are weird. There are times when my eyes look more brown. See, green is kind of between blue and brown, and mine are a dark emerald green, not the light green that you might see. Now, Phil had blue eyes, but sometimes they looked kind of gray, but they were mostly blue. Very light blue, not the deep ocean blue that some people have. Green eyes are very rare, especially dark green like mine. What that means is that I do have some brown pigment, but not enough to have really brown eyes. I actually prayed to God when I was about 4 years old, 3 or 4. Don't let my eyes turn brown. I don't want brown eyes. I think he listened. Ooh, wow. Yeah, I also have kind of rare blood. Not the rarest, but pretty rare, A negative. I'm sure someone has done my DNA and figured out all that crap. I know my blood is Rh negative because when I gave birth, they tested my blood, and at that time, if if you had Rh negative, they would give you a shot after you gave birth. Nowadays, they give you that RhoGAM shot while you're still pregnant. Oh, definitely part alien. My toes are so long they're almost fingers. I can pick up like a soft cloth or a paper napkin off the floor with my foot, but I don't make a practice of it. I have hands after all. Maybe I'm closer to a true human because of these weird things. I've tried to find whether any other animal has Rh negative blood. I can't get a definitive answer, but I think it's only in humans. Oh, Oswald has B negative. And of course, the rarest is AB negative. Poor AB negs. I forget. I think they're the. I think they can give blood to anybody, but they can't take anything but their own type. I guess they can take O negative. Nah. I've seen people I have trouble believing they're actually human. But oh, it's that Japanese tribe that has AB. Would that be the? Okay, my brains are fried. Um, can't think of the name. I had it a minute ago. Anyway, whatever. Um, see, I don't require that you stay on topic because I don't either. I thought I might talk about global warming since there's snow on the ground and it's melting. We might get up to 50 degrees Fahrenheit today. Let's see what that is centigrade. Good old Google. 10 Celsius. I don't understand why they have to say Celsius or centigrade or. Hi, Viken. I have a lot of Scottish in me. Mom used to tell us we were 1/4 Dutch, but the numbers don't add up. Our grandmother was 1/4 Dutch. We have a lot more Scottish in us on both sides, assuming my father is who they told me was my father. I'm pretty sure I'm a Busby and not a product of one of Mom's affairs, but you never know. You just freaking never know. I definitely look a lot like Granny. She was short and petite all her life. I don't have her face. I'm more like her mom's sister, Bernice. I think that's a good thing. I really liked Aunt Bernie. Anyway, let's see what else. Well, I've had weird experiences of people trying to tell me my DNA was special. I was some kind of genius and elite and all that crap. I don't know. Didn't work out that way. I just don't know about whether I'm an alien. Hope not. You see, they don't have a place in the kingdom of God, these hybrids. Uh, anyway, I've been thinking about all these strange experiences. Well, the royal bloodlines are so inbred. Remember how all of Queen Victoria's male descendants ended up with hemophilia because they were all cousins all across Europe, including Russia, Germany, the Netherlands, Denmark, even Sweden and Norway and Finland, and Belgium and France and Spain and Portugal, Italy. Victoria carried the gene. However, they can actually bleed profusely, bleed easily and profusely. It just isn't life threatening. And I have a condition known as chronic cytopenic bleeding. They don't know why, but I don't have enough platelets, so I bleed. And it's hard to stop the bleeding. I've managed it with diet and supplements, and I'm fine. But after I broke my hip, they put me on blood thinners, and I wasn't too thrilled about the idea anyway because it's injectable and I had to do it myself every day. Well, I began to see signs that didn't look good, like petechiae, little red dots on my thigh, the same thigh as my wound. And I started getting these purple marks that would turn green from blood pooling up under the skin. So I started skipping every third day. It didn't really help, so I started skipping every second day. And I was getting worse. I had the sure sign of internal bleeding. Well, first of all, I looked like the victim of a savage, brutal beating. And second, my stools were coming out black and tarry and smelled like metal. That is the sure sign of serious internal bleeding, so I quit taking them entirely, and it took 2 weeks to get back to something like normal. But I still bleed easily and profusely, and I have to balance what I eat to encourage blood clotting with what I eat to avoid kidney stones and gallstones, which are very painful. Sorry. Oh, you can't catch a virus over YouTube, so you're safe. And it's probably a cat hair up my nose again. The cat likes to rub against my face while I'm sleeping. And she dips her paw into my coffee, and she double dips. So the other day, I was in the doghouse because I took a sip of coffee and got a mouthful of cat hair. Anyway, they put you on blood thinners to prevent clotting because a big clot could go to your heart and, if not kill you, at least make you stay in the hospital for a long time and possibly undergo heart surgery. Toxoplasmosis. No, I haven't tested for that. If I remember correctly, that's a mold. Let me look up toxoplasmosis. Infection with the Eek, it's a parasite. Oh, it's from cat litter boxes. And what are the symptoms? It's serious complications for pregnant women and women with weakened people with weakened immune systems. Muscle pain, fever, and headache. Nah, no, I don't. I don't have toxoplasmosis, but I do drink a little tonic water every day, mostly for muscle cramps in my legs and feet. Had them all my life. Um, and when I was a child, nobody, the only thing they ever told me was to walk it off. Well, when you're trying to sleep and you have to get up and walk it off, that's a problem. By the way, tonic water contains quinine. In the old movies, they're always drinking gin and tonic, especially in the tropics. Well, that's because the mosquitoes carried a parasite that caused, I knew what it was a minute ago, a disease, malaria. And the cure for it was quinine, but it tastes so bad and so bitter that they would add gin to cover the flavor and because they wanted to get drunk. They'd also add a little sugar water, sugar syrup to sweeten it. Um, I haven't run a fever. I don't know whether I ran a fever in December of 2019 because my thermometer didn't work. The battery was dead. I want the old mercury thermometer that doesn't need a battery, but you can't get them because, oh my God, mercury! When I was in school, we played with the mercury, got our hands in it and everything. Now it's, oh my God, the glass thermometer might break. I broke one once to try to get the mercury out. It wouldn't come out. But maybe a little vapor might have escaped. But I'm at more risk from eating canned tuna and several other fish, by the way. Not all fish, but tuna is kind of at the top of that ladder. A lot of mercury in it because the fish from which they make tuna, the best ones are albacore. They're at the top of the food chain. They eat smaller fish, and the smaller fish eat even smaller fish, so the mercury gets concentrated. Anyway, back to bloodlines. You've probably noticed that the British royals have been breeding back. Princess Diana was noble enough, but not as inbred as the Windsors. And her sons have married women who are not nobility at all. I didn't know they could do that. I mean, Queen Elizabeth couldn't marry Diana's father because he wasn't noble enough. So what's going on here? Did they change the rules? And the Windsors aren't the rightful heirs to the throne anyway. Diana had a stronger claim than they do. She's descended from Scottish royalty. And of course, King James the Sixth of Scotland became King James the First of England. And then the Protestants killed his son. I think they hanged him. They might have chopped his head off. Charles I, and they banished his son, Charles II. Oh well, that was like 1649 or 50, long time ago. But we haven't had a true English royalty since William the Bastard. That's what his real name was. His father didn't marry his mother. He was already married. He became known as William the Conqueror. See you later, Oswald. Anyway, he was, of course, kind of French, but mostly Viking. He was Norman French, and they were descended from the Vikings who took over southwestern France, Normandy. You know, where they invaded on D-Day, the Allied forces. A lot of bloodshed there. Well, anyway, he conquered Richard III, I believe. Killed him. Let me see. No, I'm sorry. That was a different French guy, and that was later. He conquered Harold the Lesser. Okay, I'll type William of Normandy defeated Harold the Lesser and took over England. Harold fought bravely, and so did Richard III. I guess I kind of have them mixed up in my mind. Richard III was pretty much the end of the Wars of the Roses. The guy who conquered Richard III had a slight claim to the throne of England, but he was French. And technically, born and raised in England, French royalty. Harold the Lesser was an English king, but he got the nobility mad, so they didn't back him up when the French invaded. They liked William until they realized they had to learn French. William never learned English. And then way down the line, old George III, his father, I think that would have been George II, never learned English. He was German, but they didn't force the English to learn German. The French had already messed the language quite enough. Anyway, the year for William the Conqueror was 1066, last English king of England. I watched recently a documentary about Alfred the Great. Apparently, what made him great was being really good at waging war. I'm tired of war. Do you know that Donald Trump was nominated for a Nobel Prize because in his 4 years in office, he did not start any wars? Now, his son-in-law, what's his name, has been nominated for the Peace Prize as well. And there's one Democratic senator, whose name I keep forgetting. I don't remember why she was nominated. Uh, that's something to think about. No new wars. But keep your eye on Iran. That area is simmering at the moment, but Iran announced that they're going to further refine their uranium stores to a metallic form that can be used to make bombs. Why do they need to do that? The nuclear power generators use a very, very low concentration of uranium in the fuel rods. And they're pretty dangerous if the plant has a leak, like Love Canal. That was a big deal in the 70s. Not so much because the coolant water that was contaminated with radioactivity leaked and went into a local river, but because they didn't tell anybody. People living in Love Canal started getting ill from radiation related conditions. Oh well, nobody's chatting with me this morning. And I'm going off on one tangent after another. At least my internet connection seems to be holding up. I'm mostly isolated because that's just what I do, so I'm not in much danger of getting any virus, getting ill at all, especially since the Lions clubs are not meeting in person, haven't been for almost a year. That was once a month I'd actually go to a meeting with a bunch of people. Uh, Not happening. But I'm sure that the virus is out there. Some people have died, and that's tragic. I wear the mask when I go out. I try to keep the cloth mask clean, but when it's a Lions cloth mask. But when it isn't, I have a few disposables. You know, it has to be washed. It has a pouch for an insert, a filter, IV can, cooking book. Well, you know, I have a little cookbook on Amazon. I should um, expand it or write a sequel. Come on, get up there. Trying to put the mask away. Here we go. Yesterday I made liver, or I cooked liver, I should say. I haven't been able to get chicken livers, which I really love. And liver is full of all kinds of good nutrients. So I finally broke down and got some beef liver. And I'm telling you, the fry cooks at most restaurants don't know how to cook liver. It comes out tough, dry, and bitter at regular coffee shop type or family restaurants. Liver and onions. Yeah, I made liver and onions. I cooked it. I didn't make the onions. I didn't make the liver. I cooked them. Well, I um, scoured YouTube because I had never cooked beef liver before, only chicken livers. But the process is quite similar, even though most of the videos failed to mention the most important part. Before preparing liver, you wash it. Now I go to an extreme. I soak it in cold water for 5 minutes, filter out the water and do it again. well, just on the second one, I just kind of leave it for half a minute maybe, and then pull it out, rinse it real good, dry with paper towels. That takes out most of the bitterness. And then I noticed that the grocery store or the butcher, wherever the butcher works, did not remove the well, not connective tissue, what do you call it? The outside, the skin part. So I got a good knife and sliced around the outside of the liver and took that off because it's tough. It's like it's kind of like um not skin, but the connective tissue you find sometimes on a steak. It looks like it's fat around the edge, but it's really gristle. It's kind of like that. So I cut that off and then patted it dry with towels. And in the meantime, I had a little oil in the skillet and I cooked the onions. Now, I don't know whether to add salt while they're cooking or add it later because every chef and cook I've seen on YouTube has different ideas. Some say don't salt the onions while they're cooking, and others say, well, you want to get the moisture out of them, so put some salt on them. And the others say, oh no, don't put salt on them while they're cooking, they'll dry out. So I didn't put salt on them. I figured I could add it later. And when the onions started looking kind of clear, kind of translucent, I cut the liver into three smaller pieces and laid them in to the skillet, I guess. When I was a kid, what we called a skillet had very low sides, like the rim was less than an inch high. This was a nice deep frying pan, a skillet, I guess, or a griddle or grill. Meh. Anyway, it's grilled liver and onions after all. Anyway, I laid in these three pieces of liver and turned the flame down to somewhere between medium and low and put a big pat of butter in the pan and cooked them slowly at about 3 to 5 minutes on each side, depending on how thick it. Let's back up. First, I sprinkled salt and black pepper on one side of the liver. I laid it in the pan with that side down, and then sprinkled more salt and black pepper on top of them, on the side that was pointing up, and little extra salt on the onions, and a pat of butter for flavor. And because a lot of the oil was kind of in the onions by that point, just cook them slowly until they were browned but not burned. And the inside, when I actually used scissors and snipped one to see the inside. It was easier than trying to use a knife and fork in a hot pan. And when the inside was not quite gray, but not bright pink, I took the liver and onions off onto a plate and let it sit for another 5 minutes. You see, meat keeps on cooking after you take it out of the pan. And any moisture that wasn't gathered up in the middle will spread out on your plate. All the liquid is distributed through the whole thing. And you see why I'm not sure whether I'll put this in a cookbook for the kitchen challenge, but I think I might. It isn't as complicated as it sounds. And someday when I'm set up a little better, I'll actually do kitchen videos. But I'm telling you, last time I had liver and onions at a family coffee shop slash restaurant, it was so tough it was hard to cut it with a steak knife, and it tasted so bitter I couldn't eat it anyway. It tasted like bile because they hadn't washed it, and they'd cooked it on high heat so it got tough and leathery. Well, when I cooked the beef liver at home, it was tender and tasty. A little bit of the bitterness. You can't escape it. Liver is bitter. But it also had this buttery texture and flavor and just a little bit of a bite to it. It wasn't like melt in your mouth like chicken livers. It needed chewing. But oh, it was a world of difference between what I made and what I got at that coffee shop, which, by the way, went out of business. We didn't go there for the because we were visiting a Lions Club that met there. And I can see what part of the problem was. There were so many items on their menu that you couldn't really find a chef who was super skilled at any of, or at least at all of the cuisine. I mean, they had Chinese food, Mexican food, regular bland American food, a touch of English food, which they called Yorkshire pudding. I never tried it because I know what it's supposed to be. And that isn't what the picture on the menu looked like. Real Yorkshire pudding is where they have the roast on a spit, and underneath the roast they put a little pan with a loaf of bread. It's sliced. You don't want to have it just crust. You slice it and turn it open. Slice it open, turn it so the crust is on the bottom, and you let the meat juices drip onto the bread while the roast is cooking. Yes, sinew. Vegan, thank you. I think it's spelled like this. Although in England, who knows? I mean, they use Z where we use S. And yes, I know we call it Z, but it's Z. Makes more sense to me to call it Z. Anyway, that might be the British spelling. You never know. Anyway, Yorkshire pudding is the bread with the meat juices, and you have it with your slice of roast beef. They were making gravy, roast beef and gravy with mashed potatoes. That is not Yorkshire pudding. Sorry. Anyway, now I want some Yorkshire pudding, and I don't have any meat in my freezer. Well, I guess chicken counts, but I might have a little a fish fillet left. Cod. Yeah, beer battered cod off the Schwann's truck. They bring frozen food now. Back in the day, they brought only ice cream. That's how they started out. The best ice cream on the planet, even better than Thrifty, which is now sold at Rite Aid because Thrifty went bye-bye. Rite Aid is almost the same as Thrifty used to be, except their prices are much higher. Cod and chips, salt and vinegar. I don't have the right vinegar for them. What I usually do is take some mayonnaise and stir in some sweet pickle relish. It's kind of a cheater recipe for tartar sauce, but I like it better. And I dip the fish in that. I do use a lot of salt, sea salt, whenever possible. Although some sea salt is not really the real thing, like Morton's, they clean it so thoroughly that it doesn't have the other minerals that you want to get from sea salt. So it kind of defeats the purpose. Yeah, I've had the cod and chips with salt and vinegar as well. First time I had those was at an H. Salt Esquire. I think it was in San Francisco. I was 17 and visiting Stanford University as a guest of my cousins, John and Pam. I was hoping to go to Stanford, but it's probably best that I didn't because I didn't have much money. I wouldn't have fit in. But I wanted to study physics and get a nice degree with honors so that a veterinary school would take me and I could learn veterinary medicine and become an animal doctor. It didn't work out, but I sure remember those fish and chips. I'd never had anything like it before. It was so good. Now, I don't do deep fat frying at home, but I'll put an inch or two of oil in the bottom of a tall soup pot and cook them that way. Them over several times to get both sides evenly browned. And then I put them in the oven to make sure the fish is cooked and to let some of the oil drip off. Now, as far as chips go, in England, that's what we might call French fries, but not exactly. So I take the same pot and I cut a potato in quarters, maybe a little smaller, the long way, not the short way, the long way. So I have these long wedges of potatoes. Cook them in the same oil, preferably first before cooking the fish. Get them now. Potatoes have a lot of water in them, and I've seen various hacks for dealing with that, but I don't bother. I might try dipping them into water with baking soda. That's one of the things you might do. It also makes them softer, but mainly, well, then I'd have to dry them off with paper towels. But the main thing is to cook them in the oil till they start to brown. And then since I'm not doing deep fat frying, they're just boiling at first to get all the water out. But they start to brown, so I use the tongs and take them out and put them in the oven at about 350 Fahrenheit. So let's go to good old Google 350F2C. Uh-huh. Well, 176.667. So if you're on centigrade or Celsius, 175. And at least 10 minutes to get cooked all the way through to the center and let a little oil drip off. And when they're done, same thing with the fish. And just to make sure it's fully cooked, and let some all the way to the center and let some of the oil drip off. As far as oils go, my favorite is grapeseed, not rape seed, which is also an oil, but grapeseed. I tried it once because I was looking for something different from corn oil or other seed oils, like, can't remember. Some of them just say cooking oil and they're whatever, all mixed together. Sunflower oil or safflower. Eh, they have flavors that they add to the food, and grapeseed does not. So I tried it and I was very happy with it. It has a high smoke point. You can get it really hot before it goes poof and burns down your kitchen, or just gets smoky and makes your food taste bad. But I went with the generic cooking oil with whatever in it, and it came out fine. And since I use so much oil in doing this, and grapeseed oil is not cheap, I used the cheap oil, and it came out fine. I didn't have a thermometer to test the temperature of the oil before putting the food in, so I used my grandmother's method. You get your hand wet and you sprinkle little tiny droplets of water onto the oil. If they disappear immediately, you're good. If they don't, and they take a little time to boil off, it isn't hot enough. As far as being too hot, you can see the oil kind of want to smoke, and you don't want that. Or you can, if you're experienced, you put your hand a few inches above the pot and feel the temperature. But I'm such a chicken, I haven't had the oil get super hot. I use a medium heat, not the high heat. And I use a gas stove so that when I turn it off, it's off. Now, they claim that the new electric stoves also do that, but I just haven't had good experiences with electric cooking, whether an electric stovetop or a hot plate, just not happening. So, anyway, it's a lot like the liver, a little complicated for a cookbook, and in this case, kind of dangerous. Even though I have only an inch or two of oil in the bottom of the pan, it is a fire hazard, so I do keep a fire extinguisher on hand. And since my kitchen is like a narrow, straight, back to the wall thing, and the stove is at the far end where the outside wall of the house is, I keep the fire extinguisher back at the open end. Because when there's a fire, you don't want to try to lean through the fire to grab your extinguisher. You want to run away, grab an extinguisher that's far away, and then point it toward the fire. Now, yes, I'm crossing myself. No, I'm not a Catholic, but knock on wood, I've never had a real kitchen fire, nothing like that. Worst I've had is a frying pan on fire, but it didn't reach very tall. It was like less than 6 inches, less than 10 centimeters. I'm gradually and quite against my will getting used to metric. I had to use it in science class, but it just I didn't grow up with it. It just doesn't seem familiar to me. Oh, and in England, they measure their weight in stone. Whoa. Okay, I'm like about, what is a stone? 16 pounds? I have to use a calculator. Let's say I'm probably up to 100 pounds now. I've gained a little weight. Divided by 16, 6¼ stone. I was down to 90 pounds. And the doctor didn't even seem concerned about it. Or the fact that I was 2 or 3 inches shorter than I used to be. So I had to start working on it myself. I increased my food safety measures and I changed my diet to get more calories into me. And, I've had a little success. I've gained 10 pounds in a year and a half. And in 2 years with that stupid doctor, I kept losing weight and getting shorter. I'm doing the exercises that my chiropractor gave me back before bummer care when I could afford to pay cash for medical care. Long story. Not going to make it short, just not going to tell it. And I'm doing better. I don't think I'm losing more height. I know I'm gaining a little weight slowly, which is the best way to do it. So, as I learn to cook more things, and I try these things on YouTube, but eventually make my own little changes, I'm getting better at it. My husband once said I was the worst cook he'd ever met, but I'd never had the opportunity to learn cooking. In our house, it was either hamburger with tomato sauce and noodles, or hamburger with a white sauce, very basic, made from milk and flour, on toast, or canned tuna in a white sauce on toast. That was about it. Sometimes mom would make short ribs and cabbage. She'd cook the cabbage. Well, the short ribs you're supposed to cook a long time, but she'd put the cabbage in with it, just cutting quarters. Great big head of cabbage, 4 pieces. Put them all in a pressure cooker and cook them all day long at 15 pounds pressure. Oh, and the worst was ham hocks and beans. I actually like those when they're made right, but once again, in the pressure cooker at 15 pounds, cooking all day long, and it would come out as this thick, pasty, gooey mess of beans. I mean, totally massacred. Worse than refried beans, and I like. Well, it's supposed to be rather liquid to have some broth. Anyway, the worst part was in both cases, whether it was short ribs or ham hocks, there was so little meat and in such small pieces you couldn't find it. Well, in the case of the ham hocks, it was just shreds, a little shred here and there, kind of like a piece of yarn for knitting. In the case of the short ribs, yeah, we'd get a rib and a big bowl of cabbage. And the thing about cooking cabbage that long is it's like trying to eat rubber. You have to cut it with a steak knife and then chew it forever. I like cabbage, but you're not supposed to cook it all day long. When you make a pot of stew or soup, You either shred your cabbage or cut it in small pieces, not more than an inch square, and you add it in the last 3 to 5 minutes of cooking. Don't ever cook it more than 8 minutes. Or if you're like me, I just put some cabbage in the bottom of the bowl and ladle the hot soup over it. And since the soup is too hot to eat right away, I let it sit on top of the cabbage and cook it for 3 to 5 minutes before I eat. Cabbage is a beautiful vegetable. It's sweet and it's nutritious, and I just love it when it's cooked right, or better yet, raw in a coleslaw. That recipe's in my cookbook. No, a cookbook for the kitchen challenged by the kitchen challenged. Anyway, I wasn't allowed to cook short ribs and cabbage or ham hocks and beans. I just had to clean up afterward. And it was so oppressive. The minute I put down my fork or my spoon at the dinner table, go do the dishes. I didn't get to sit and talk with the family or any guests, which was rare, usually family. I didn't get to let my food settle in my stomach. I was required to jump right up and go clean the kitchen and wash all the dishes. Right away, excluded from the rest of the family, which wasn't such a torture after all. But no rest for the weary. When your tummy's full, you're sleepy. Let it settle for 5 or 10 minutes. The kitchen will still be there. Or in my case, it's still there from yesterday's liver and onions. But oh man, that was tasty. I did clean the skillet right away. It it's a compromise. I love cast iron, but it's awfully heavy and I'm getting old. So I got this steel skillet that's seasoned like cast iron. It's an amazing thing. Now I have another pan I haven't tried yet. It's granite finish. I'm trying to avoid the hazards of non-stick surfaces, the weird chemicals and stuff. Now I haven't tried the one that has a granite finish. I don't know what they stuck it to the pan with, but I just had to try one and it was on sale. Let me go get it and show it to you. Up, up. Oh, old age is not all it's cracked up to be. Okay. This is one of those rare instances where I'm keeping the instructions. The brand name is Michelangelo, and it has use and care. Okay, and it has a glass lid, which I like. I like being able to see what's cooking without taking the lid off. Now, see, I haven't used it. The cardboard packing is still there. But here, it looks like granite, and the bottom has that center thingy that is supposed to do something. Anyway, it has a pattern that's supposed to spread heat evenly so you don't have things burning on one side and raw on the other side. Looks cool. Of course, I do intend to read the use and care instructions. I read them once, but I don't remember. So I'm going to need to read them again and try it. I didn't want my first use to be liver because liver in particular, not so much the onions, can leave a flavor in the pan that you never get rid of. So I used the steel frying pan with the finish that's like cast iron, and it isn't nearly as heavy. And it's still a little difficult for me to manage. It is kind of heavy, but not like cast iron where I need two hands and oh. Anyway, let me put this back. Oh, almost dropped my fruitcake. I happen to like fruitcake. I don't use it as a doorstop. I eat it. I had a devil of a time finding fruitcake. Finally settled on these weird loaf-shaped fruitcakes from what you call it, old-fashioned Claxton fruitcake, world famous since 1910. The Claxton Bakery Incorporated. Well, it isn't the shape I expect in a fruitcake, but it has the flavor and the fruits. Some things that pass for fruitcake have some raisins in a dry bread and some nuts, usually pecan halves on top. That doesn't qualify in my mind. Now, these don't have the citrons that I expected, but they have the red cherries, the green cherries, the raisins, or let's see, in Europe, raisin means grape, pretty much. What are those things called? Oh, well, they're dried grapes, raisins. Currants. Currants are just little raisins. They can be made from a special kind of grape, or they can just be made from little grapes. And it has the candied citrus peels. Now, normally I hate candied citrus peels, but in a fruitcake, heaven. But I wanted a round fruitcake in a tin. They're all crap. They aren't the real thing. They're more like a plum cake, only they're so dry they don't even qualify. I suppose I could pour some rum or brandy over them and they wouldn't be so dry, but they're just not the same. This is the gold standard. Claxton Bakery in Claxton, Georgia. Claxton. Now I gotta eat some. Well, anyway, someday I might try to make fruitcake, but I'm not that ambitious at the moment. I did make Toll House cookies. The instructions are on the back of the package of chocolate chips. But fruitcake's a little beyond me at the moment. Anyway, I gotta get out of here. Got stuff to do. And the sun is shining, and a friendly local is going to come dig out my walk because it's covered in snow again. So he'll do that while it's sunny. So all of you have a great day, and thank you for listening. Hey, no typos? That's amazing. All right, catch you guys later. God bless.